Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to an HTML and CSS video. This is actually going to be reviewing and going over a lot of the different concepts we have learned. So in this video it's going to be a little bit longer than normal, but we're going to go from a website design all the way to the actual website itself. So we're going to be using HTML and CSS and, basic understanding of what we want to do and make our website a reality. So I'm going to show you some tips and trades and tricks in this video so that you can go ahead and make your website quickly and have some little things that you can do to make it work a little bit better. So I recommend that you go ahead and watch this video in maybe bits and pieces. You can try to watch this whole thing once through and then try to build your website and come back to it, but it's going to go pretty quick, so just know that I'm going to go through things and you can go ahead and pause it at any point and continue on from there. So the first thing we want to do though is let's go ahead and take a look at my Alright, so let's take a look here. So as you can see, I've got a nice little banner up here, and I have a logo that I've chosen out, and I've got Let's Go Exploring up as my website title or whatever, And then up here I have my menu. I've got 4 different web pages: home, blog, explorers, and trips. So the explorers and trips will actually have drop-down menus showing the different explorers, and trips will also have the same with different trips. Now, this home page has 3 different sections. The first section is like the about page, or what we do little section here. So as you can see, I have like a little bit of blurb about everything that this website does and why you should be here. The second little section I have here is called Famous Explorers, and then I'm going to have pictures. These little boxes with X's in them is actually is a placeholder for a picture. And then I'm going to have a list of famous historical explorers that you could click on, and then they would take you to that actual explorers page in this drop-down menu that would be there. And then my third section is the 3 different trips that I would have listed in this other web page here. It's the Isle of Skye, North Cascades, Antarctica. And I have dates and I have pictures here, and you could actually click on these pictures, and then it would take you to the different trips. So this is my website design. This is a kind of a cool little design, and let's go ahead and see how we can make this. So the first step we need to take is we actually need to do the HTML. Alright, so you should probably go ahead and open up a Notepad or a Notepad++ file, and let's go ahead and get started here. So I'm going to go ahead and go straight to my Notepad++ file and start from scratch. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to want to put in, all the different tags that I need to start off with. So my doc type HTML. I'm going to type in my HTML tag. Going to get my head, give it a title really quick for my web page. Let's say Explorers United. That's my title. That's going to show up in my tab at the top. So that's my title. And then I'm going to go ahead and open up my style tag right now and close it. I'll come back to that later. Close my head. And let's open up my body, and we'll start with my header. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to have my image here. I'm going to put this on the side so I can see it, and then put my code over here so I can kind of follow along and we can see what we're building step by step with the HTML. So the HTML, right, we're just going to be putting everything that we want in it. So the first thing that I want is I'm going to want my logo. So I'm going to say image. I'm going to give it an ID equals logo so I can change the style of it individually. So ID equals logo. The source, I have I have a separate Notepad file where I have all my links here. So where did I put that? It's in this file here. Here it is. So I'm going to take this guy and put that there. And then I'm going to go ahead, and there's my logo. And now I'm going to go ahead and also put in a heading, and that's will be where I'll give it the ID equals banner, because that's my banner, right, with the Let's Go Exploring. So now I can be able to change the Let's Go Exploring, make it bigger, and position it if I need to. So /H1, and there is my header. That's all I have in it, right? I can then change the style when we go up to the CSS, but for now that's all I need for my HTML. The next thing I'm going to have is my actual below that. I'm going to go top down, right? So we're going to start at the header and go downward. I'm going to actually do my menu now. So let's do UL, and I'm going to give it a class, right? This way I can, if I did another unordered list, I could, just change this one list in my style and not affect any other unordered list. So I'm going to give it the class equals menu, and now each of my list items will then have that class as well, because these are all, inside of my menu, so I'm giving this section the class menu because that makes sense, right? href equals, and I'm actually not going to put in the URLs here, I'm just going to put in placeholders. That's why it says hashtag home. You would actually be putting your links in this, in right here where it says hyperreference, okay? So I'm going to say home/a/li, and I'm going to go ahead and copy paste this because, you know, I don't need to do this a couple times, and then just change this to blog, this to explorers, this to trips, right? These are all, again, these are all my different menu options here. So I'm going to change this here to blog, right? Blog. This is going to be explorers. And this is going to be trips. Okay? And I know that I talked about a drop-down menu. I'll come down and after I do the original, just getting everything basically laid out, I'll come back at the end and make that drop-down menu. Because right now, I want to stick to the basics and, you know, keep things simple. So as you can see, all of my UL has the class equals menu, and all of my list items have the class equals menu. That way, when I go up here into my style, I can then say, you know, ul.menu and li.menu, and just select these, not any other list items or unordered lists. I don't want to do that. The one other thing I'm going to want to do is be able to indicate that I have an active what page I'm on. So right now, I'm making my home page, right? This looks like a good home page. So I'm going to give this link the class active, so I can change the color of just this link tag and change the color so that it indicates that I'm actually, you know, on the home page, and, you know, the user understands that I'm on the home page. All right, so there's my header, there's my menu. Let's go ahead and go on to the next section. So the next section I'm going to have, and I didn't talk about these before, but we're going to be using a lot of these div elements. Now, what these div elements do is they allow us to create basically little sections with big boxes around them so that we can put things inside of it and group things together. Now notice, we want all of these, this has a big box around it, we want all of this is probably a heading right here, this is a paragraph, and then we got a list right here, right? So we want to group all of these together. And the way we do that is with a div. And this div element allows us to group things together and manipulate them and position them all together, and just basically create a big box that we can move around everything and keep them separate from other things. So I'm actually going to have 3 different div elements, right? I'm going to have one for my what we do or about section here, a second one for my famous explorers little box here with all my images and my different links, and then a third one for all my trips. So I'm going to actually have 3 different div sections, like 3 big div sections, and I might even have some little div sections in here for each of these images so that I can position those inside of my other bigger section, right? So let's go ahead and see how that plays out. So first I'm going to do give this the class equals about, because this is my about page. So now inside of this about page, I'm going to want to have h1 for my what we do page. I'll give it the ID equals welcome, or I guess I'll give it the ID equals what we do, because that's what all I'm going to say. And then I'm going to literally type in what we do. And again, the reason I gave it that ID is because when I use this, I can use this ID then up in my style and say hashtag what we do, if I can use a hashtag properly. And then I can go ahead and define styles for that independently of all the other headings. So that's one thing to keep in mind, okay? So the next thing I'm going to have is I'm going to have a paragraph, right? And my paragraph says, are you someone who can't help but find wonder and curiosity when you look at the world? Say that's one paragraph. I know it's a little sappy, but you know, this is a inspirational website where you're coming to go and explore the world. Now my second paragraph will be this website is for you. Okay? Make you feel like you belong. Alright, and my third paragraph will be the purpose of this website is comprised of 3 things. Now, I'm not actually going to type in 1, 2, 3. I want to use an ordered list, right? So an ordered list is going to allow me to do this. LI, I can say provide, the first item is going to be provide a way for fellow explorers. I can type explorers to share stories via our blog page. So that sounds like cool. I want to share stories. The second item will be contain resources for famous explorers throughout history and modern times. Right? So again, I'm just basically saying what my website is about, right? So that this is what this section is over here. And then my third one is going to be about the trips that I want. So plan adventures for groups to go to new and exciting places. See the trips planned below. And basically I'm just directing them to look at the second section I have here. So that's all I want in this little section, right? So I'm going to go ahead and close out my div tag, and now all of these, everything from here up is going to be inside of that div, and then I can manipulate that div and change the size of all of those elements just by calling this class about. Alright, so my next div is going to be the famous explorers div, right? Let's go to the right here. We'll say class equals explorers. Alright, and then what I'm actually going to do is the first thing is I'm going to say heading and say famous explorers. We'll say ID equals explorers, explorer heading. Right, again, I'm using these IDs so that I can manipulate just this one heading, and I'll say famous explorers /h1. Now, what I want to do actually in this case now is I'm going to want to make separate div elements for each of these images so that I can position these images and these texts together. Okay, so it's going to make it a little bit easier and it'll make more sense, right? I want to be able to position each of these 6 images I have here independently of each other. And so what I should do if I want to position them independently is I should just give them a little element, give them the div elements to section them off, and then I can position them inside of the famous explorers section. So what I'm going to say is div, I'm going to give it the ID, let's give it a class, equals xp1 or explorer1, and then I'm going to say, I don't know, I have a couple different, right now I'm just going to put in, so my actual explorers are Pythias, so we'll say P Pythias is the first one, and then I'm going to give it an image, source equals, grab that image source that I have here. So, and again, I already found all these images. You might want to do this, find your images before you actually, do it. So that's my first one, right? So as you can see, div class explorer1, Pythias, and then I gave it the image, and now I'm going to be able to like float these and position this paragraph and this image together, and then position it with the other one so that it has the right size. So I'm going to go ahead and then take these this div class equals explorer, and I'm going to copy that 6 times, change it to xp2, explorer2, explorer3, explorer4, explorer5, and explorer6. Okay, so obviously I would probably change all of these to different explorers, but right now I'm going to be a little bit lazy and just say they're all about Pythias. I have a list here of all the different explorers that I would talk about: Eric the Red, Leif Erikson, Zhang He, Magellan, and Francis the Drake. But right now I'm not going to do that because, this is enough to show you how it works. Alright, so even though I don't have all these explorers, now I can go ahead and move on to my third section. And again, I'll be able to position each of these classes independently of each other and position them just the way I want them to go. So that's why I did these div elements again, is so that I can group this paragraph and this image together and then move them together so that they don't get all, messed up and cattywampus and askew, right? So again, all of this is inside of my other div class here. It's the explorers section, so all of this is in here, and then I have other div elements inside of that. So I'm going to be able to position all of these together. Alright, so the third section I have, and the final part of my actual HTML, is going to be my div class. Again, this is my third section, and I'm going to say trips is my third class here for this, Isle of Skye, North Cascades, Antarctica, and I'm going to go ahead and actually, make other div elements for each of those. So the first thing I'm going to have is my div class equals Skye for the Isle of Skye, and if you haven't been there, you should go. It's an amazing place. So div class Skye, I'm going to give it h1 Isle of Skye /h1, so that's my heading right here that you can see. And then I'm going to say image source equals, go get my image that I have up here on my separate page, grab it, that there. And then let's go ahead and close that div. Oh wait, I got one more thing. Let's say paragraph, date, and I'm just going to put placeholders for the date of this trip, right? Because I don't know when the trip would be. So it's just a placeholder. And then what I'm going to do is going to close my div class, and I'm going to actually do the same thing for all the other different trips, right? So I'll replace this with sky to North Cascades. Have a different one. Oops. North Cascades. Don't want to have any spaces in my class names. That'll mess things up. And then I'll say North Cascades. Again, if you haven't been to the North Cascades to go on a hike, you really should. The North Cascades are one of my favorite places to go hiking in this area. It's absolutely, absolutely beautiful, and it might just change your life. I don't know. So I took a picture of the actual, the Sahel Arm. Oops, that was right. So the Sahel Arm, and that's actually a really, really cool area. It's a really big glacier. Anyways, I'm getting distracted. So that's my second trip here that you can see, so I'll be able to group this together and move things around. And then my third trip would, let's say we're being really ambitious and we're planning for a trip to Antarctica. And this is a picture of actually the Gerlache Strait that I have here, so I'll put that in there, give it enough details, and I'll go ahead and get that image link here, get the full thing. It's a big one. Gosh, I hate long links, but sometimes they are necessary. So put that in there, and now I have a div class for each of these. Alright, so that's pretty great. So now, right, each of my trips have their own individual div class, so I can then position the name, the picture, and the date independently inside of this bigger div class, which is my trips, right? So I'm creating sections with those divs, right? They're just basically big things to create sections so that I can position them and really format things the way I want to. So notice I closed that div tag up here, right? Matches and closed. Alright, so I'm going to close my body and also close my HTML tag, and let's go ahead and save this. I'm just going to save it as let's go HTML. Oops, that's Haskell. That's not what I want. Where are you? HTML. And let's go ahead and save this as I don't know, Explorers United.html. Let's save it. And now I've saved it. Let's go ahead and go open that up and see what it looks like with just the HTML. I'm assuming it's going to look pretty awful because HTML is really bland, but let's take a look and see what it looks like. Let's give Google Chrome a second to open up. Alright, so here it is. You can see I got my logo, and I've got my menu, and I've got my About section, and here's my famous explorers. I scroll down, and oh my god, this looks awful. I'm going to have to do some resizing and some serious reconfiguration with CSS, right? So obviously, again, HTML is pretty limited, so we need to use CSS to make this, not look like a disaster, which it is currently. It's currently a disaster. So let's go ahead and see what we can do with the CSS. Alright, so let's go ahead and go up into my style tag here. And as you can see, I already opened and closed it so that I don't forget. And the first thing, let's go from the top down. So we're going to start with the header and work our way down into these sections, right? So as you can tell, that's probably the best way to do it so you don't mess things up as you go along. Start at the bottom, then go up. You could cause some issues. So let's go ahead and start with the header then. So we'll type in header, right? That selects the header. Now a couple things we're going to want to do is we're probably going to want to set a background color. Now I have a background color in mind. I just looked up the hexadecimal color here. So remember, you can put hexadecimal colors as your background color. And that should have been a hashtag here. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to give it a height. And let's go ahead and say I want 150 pixels, because that's about a good height. Let's see how that looks now. So now, as you can tell, okay, the banner header looks pretty decent, but we probably want to play around with this logo, right? So I gave this ID logo. Let's go ahead and play with that now. So remember, to select IDs, we say hashtag logo, and we can again go ahead and play with that. So the first thing we're going to want to do is we're going to actually float this to the left so that things can float around it, right? And then we're going to go ahead and say, I'm going to change the height of it to 125 pixels and the width to 125 pixels so it kind of fits a little bit better. Let's see how that looks. Much better, much better. So the next thing I'm going to want to do is I probably want to position this in the center, so I'll probably say position absolute, so that it moves with respect to the header, and I'm going to say left 29%, just as a first guess. That's pretty good. That's pretty close to the center. Okay, so now as you can see, that kind of messed up my heading here. So let's go ahead and try to fix that next, right? So we have an ID for that as well, and that is our ID banner right here, right? ID banner. So I'm going to say hashtag banner, and then I'm going to go ahead and also float that to the left. And as you can see, if we do that, it's going to do that, but we want to position this. So we're going to have to say position absolutes, right? We need to position this so that it's going to kind of float over here. And I found a really cool positioning actually so that it looks almost a little fancy. And so I'm going to do left 45%. And if I look at that, oh, that's not quite right. But if we open this up, right, it's kind of like almost hidden in there. So let's go ahead and mess around with this a little bit more. Let's do, let's try 30.5%. Oh, we want to move it further to the left, so let's do 38.5. So that's getting better. Again, and like a lot of times, this is just a matter of messing around with things and getting it to fit in the perfect place. So I could spend all day getting this positioned right. That's better. Let's move this down from the top a little bit. Let's say 5%. And that's about perfect, right? Now we're pretty close to perfect there. So let's say that I call that good. I'm good there, right? So now I have my header all positioned. Things look nice there. I've got a nice little logo, and I've got my nice little, banner here, and it's all in my header. So that looks pretty nice. If we look at the full thing, it's a little more spread out with this, but it looks pretty good. I like how this is looking so far. Now the next thing we're going to do is let's go ahead and change the style of our menu here, because right now obviously this menu is pretty drab, and don't use drab lightly. So let's go ahead and select that unordered list, right? So we have this unordered list right here. So we'll say ul.menu. We gave it this class on purpose so that we can use that class, and if we had other unordered lists, if we just did ul, it would change every unordered list in our actual page. But right now we want to just do the unordered lists with the class menu. So I say ul.menu, and then the first thing I'm going to do is list-style type:"none", and let's save that. And now that's gone. So that's a good first step. The next thing I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to actually make this, not a vertical menu, but a horizontal menu. So the way I do that is I say li.menu, and I'm going to say float left, and then I do that, refresh it, and now they're right side by side. Notice this kind of snuck up there. We'll have to position this later. Again, as we go through things might kind of break, but just focus on what's in front of you, and then we can go ahead and go step by step and fix things as they come up. So the first thing I'm going to want to do is change the width of this, set it to 25% so that it's, got a nice width, and now it doesn't try to sneak up there. So I know that sometimes when you change something, it might break your, quote-unquote, break your code, but you can always fix it. So do not panic is all I have to say. So now that fits really nicely in there. Now let's go ahead and actually change the style of these links themselves, right? So we can actually, make them look better and have like little blocks and hover over them. So the next thing we're going to do is say li.menu and now this is going to select the links that are the child elements of li.menu. Okay, so as you can tell, it actually, it's just all of these things inside here. So it's inside of this li with the class.menu, so any link with the parent element li.menu will be selected. So we only have a couple of those, and those happen to be our menu. So the first thing we're going to do is say display block, and now that's just going to make it so that it displays as a block and kind of spreads it out a little bit and allows us to hover over the entire link. The next thing I'm going to do is say background-color, and I'm going to choose the color of my actual block. Let's go ahead and say, I don't know, what's a good color? Let's do black. I don't know. I'm just choosing at random here. The next thing I want to do is I want to take off that annoying underline, so I'll say text decoration : none, and let's see what this does, right? So okay, so we got that. Remember, a couple things we might want to change is we might want to actually make the padding a little bit bigger, right? So we'll say, notice these are like really kind of like scrunched in there almost, so let's make the padding a little bit bigger. Let's say 13 pixels. See how that looks? Oh, that's a little bit better. The one thing that I'm going to say is notice there's just like this gap here. I don't like that gap. I don't know about you guys, but that kind of bothers me. So I'm going to go back up to my containing element that contains all of the list items, which is my ul.menu right here, right? and I'm going to go ahead and say position, let's say absolute, because it's going to move absolutely with regard to that, and I want to say left, and I don't want it to be left at all, right? I want to be right up next to that wall. So I do that, and it positions it over there. So we had some other issues when we did that, though. Notice when I did that, it resized everything. So now I'm going to have to do a couple things here. So I went ahead and hard-coded this width. The next thing I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to say I want to turn off this margin for this UL. So now this is going to make it butt up against the header a little bit. And there we go there. And the next thing I'm going to want to do is turn off the margin for this LI menu and also the margin for the links themselves. So I'm turning off the margin so that it can be, you know, right up against things and not have to worry about it. So now if I do that, oops, I need to save it. Still not working. 1 second here. I think I need to put the padding as 0 in here, and that should do it. Did not. Padding here then. Right, I'm just messing around until something. There we go. So as you can tell, there was some weird padding going on there, and so if I turn off both the margin and the padding for my ul.menu, it's going to shift it over, and now it's going to be in line with it. So there we go. There's that. And again, I'm going to repeat this. I keep saying this. So much of CSS is literally just sitting here and being patient and not getting frustrated. So if you are getting frustrated, do this for me. Take a breathe in, really slow, hold it, and breathe it out. And then start to code again, okay? That's all I want. So the next thing I want to do is, notice these are kind of like off on the left. I don't like that. I'm going to say text-align center and Control S, and now we got that. And I'm also going to change the color to white because that blue is bothering me. So color white, that looks good. Next thing is I might want to actually have some separation for each of these little blocks, right? So I'll say border dash right, and then I'm going to say, I don't know, 2 pixels, you know, if I can type it, 2 pixels solid white. And now I've got that little separator, so that looks pretty good actually, pretty slick. So again, border dash right is only going to turn on the right border, so it's not going to turn on the rest of the borders. You could do border dash left, or you could do, you know, border top or border dash bottom. You don't have to set the entire border. You can just do one side of that border. Okay, so that looks pretty good for these list item, the default settings. Let's go ahead and move on to when we hover over it, we want to actually change the properties of it. So we'll say li.menu a:hover. Now remember, this :hover is a pseudo class, right? This is the pseudo class that when we hover over that element, it defines the properties when we hover over it. So that's why it's called a pseudo class, is because it's basically like a hidden or phantom class that has pre-existing it's basically a pre-existing class that exists in HTML and CSS that we can use to our benefit, and in this case we're going to use the hover pseudo class so that when we hover over something we can then change the style, right? So now what we're going to do is I'm going to make the background color when I hover over these, I'm going to change it to, I don't know what makes sense, let's change it to, how about this color, and let's see how that looks. I might not like this. That looks pretty not great. Let's maybe try to change the border up here. Let's say, how about 2 pixels solid black? See how that looks? No. Okay. I'm going to change that. That's going to bother me. Let's just make this background. And again, sometimes you just kind of got to play with things and see if you like it. Let's make it green. I like green. All right. Oh, that's so much better. Oh, I love it. All right. So there we go. Now with this li.menu a:hover, when we hover over things, it indicates that we are hovering over it, right? Which is really, really nice. You could also, if you wanted to, you could do like a background image. You could say background, you know, URL, and then put your link in here. And then when you hover over it, instead of changing the background color, it would actually give you that image. So if you wanted to do that, this is how you do it. And then this would be your URL, right? You know, image URL. I'm not going to do that. And then you put that in there, and then it would actually appear when you hover over things. And that goes for anything, not just the A tag, the anchor tag, right, for links. You could do this for any, if I wanted to have, when people hover over my header, like have it change, you could do that too. That's all just using this :hover, this pseudo class, right, this hover pseudo class. So go ahead and play around with that a little bit. All right, so we're off to a good start here. This is looking pretty decent now. So I've got Let's Go Exploring. Things are looking good here. Got my logo, got my menu. Let's move on to the next thing. So the next thing we're going to want to play with is this first What We Do section right here, right? So the first thing I want to say is, what was the name of my class, right? Let's go down here. So it says class equals about. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say div.about, and now I can go ahead and start choosing my style. So the first thing I'm going to want to do is say float left, so that, you know, I'm going to actually create it floating to the left. Let's change the width, make it a little, not take up the whole web page. Let's say 60%. Let's see what this is looking like so far. Didn't work. Oh, it's up. There it goes. Took a second. All right. So there we go. So as we can see, it's kind of floating off to the left there. One problem I'm already seeing here is that I accidentally made a mistake here. This shouldn't be P. This should be LI, right? Oh no, that should be right there. Yep. So LI. These all should be LI. I made a mistake earlier, guys. Making mistakes. That's okay. Easy to fix. And there we go. Now that's better. Ugh, that was rookie mistake. Rookie mistake. That's okay. Even when you're decent at this, you still make rookie mistakes. So go back here, and this is looking okay. I'm going to have to do some more positioning, right? So I'm going to go ahead and actually, let's try to position that other this famous explorers, right? So let's go down here. It's the class is explorers. So let's go ahead and say div, back up, div.explorers, and I'm going to go ahead, because right now this is bothering me. I can change the style of this in a second, but first let's get things positioned properly, and then we'll go back. So float colon left. Let's do float left for this, right? So that'll float to the left of this, or not to the left. It's actually going to go on the right, which is really nice, actually. So watch. If I change this width and I'd make it, I don't know, make it 29%. Let's make it 30. Make it even numbers. I don't know, Devin. Why did you do that? All right, so do that. Give it a second. It's loading for some reason. It's taking its sweet time. You don't even need internet. It's on my computer. Okay, so now that's looking a little better, right? So at least this is on the right. We're going to have to play around with the size of this image, right? This image is a little too big. It's actually overflowing outside of my little box here, but we can work with that now. So let's go ahead and go back to this first div.about section, this section over here, right, that we have here, and let's go ahead and change some styles to that. So the first thing I'm going to want to do is I probably want to, I don't know, make the fonts maybe a little bigger. It's font dash size. Let's make it 150%. See how that looks? It's a little too big. Actually, no, that's all right. Let's keep it that big. No, I don't like it. 140%. Some minor tweakings go a long ways. Control S. Give it a second. And that's about perfect for me. I want it to be perfect, and there it is. All right, the next thing I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to give it a, let's go ahead and give it a border. So give it a border. All right, so let's make this border 2 pixels solid, I don't know. Let's keep with the black. That sounds good. Let's see how that looks. And that looks okay, but let's go ahead and give it some padding. And some, let's give it some padding here, because it's kind of like everything's butted up against the side, and I don't really like that. Let's go ahead and say 5 pixels. See how that looks? That looks better. And let's give it a margin as well. So let's say margin, and let's go ahead and say, let's make the margin, I don't know, 20 pixels. Oh, that looks good. I like that. I like that. So let's go ahead and see what it looks like in the big window really quick. Okay, so this is looking pretty decent. Might want to move this over a little bit left if you want that. You could do that yourself, but right now I'm going to go ahead and leave that. Actually, what I could do if I wanted to, right, I don't have to set the entire margin. I could just say margin dash left, right, and I could say margin dash left is, let's go ahead and say 0 pixels, because I want it to be butted up right against over there on this side over here, so it's in line with the rest of my header. But I could say margin dash right, 20 pixels, margin dash top 20 pixels, right? And now things are going to be a little more separated. So do that. See, now if I go back to the big window, that looks pretty decent. I kind of like that. Maybe want to mess with that padding a little bit more, maybe 10 pixels, maybe be a little bit better. Let's go ahead and check that out again. And that looks about perfect for me. I'm going to go ahead and leave that at that. So let's go ahead and call that good for this guy. Actually, no, let's forgot about a background color. Let's do a background color, and let's think here. Keeping with the theme, let's go green. Let's see what green looks like. That looks okay. We just got to change the color of the text. Let's say change the color to white, and that looks okay. I'm actually, you know, honestly, I think I'm gonna go back up and take this color from my header, take that, and let's go down here and use that instead, because I kind of like that color, and honestly that green is just not great. Oops, Control S, refresh. That looks okay. I'm not gonna get too picky right now, because you know things are okay. But with the black and the blue, that'll be fine. All right. So maybe I want to give it a border radius to, you know, round off these corners. Maybe let's give it a nice little soft edge. Let's say 5 pixels and see what that looks like. Okay, that's nice. It's not pointy anymore. I don't like pointy edges. All right, cool. So we got that. Now the next thing we're going to want to do is, I don't like this what we do off to the side. So thankfully I gave it this ID, what we do, right? So I can go up here and say, if I want to, say hashtag what we do, and it's going to autofill for me. And I'm going to go ahead and say text-align center. And I mean, you could change the font family if you want. Font family. I'm trying to think of fonts. The only one I ever remember is Comic Sans, and I'm not going to do Comic Sans. So I'm just going to leave that alone. Do that, and that looks pretty nice. I could also, if I wanted to, you know, make a little box for this itself. If I wanted to, say border, you know, 1 pixel. Solid, I don't know, green. Well, actually, let's do black. And now I'm gonna have a little border around just that, right? Actually, that doesn't look bad, right? Kind of like that. Kind of like that. So I could set the width of that individually. Say width is, I don't know, let's say 50%. Let's see what that looks like. Oh, that messed it up. So let's do 75%. Looks pretty good. So I kind of like that. The problem when you do this, right, is it's going to actually, as you can tell, it moved everything to the left because it's making 75% starting from the left going to the right. So it's almost like a little one of those little bars where 0's here, 100's there, 75% is 3/4 of the way there. So when you mess with the width, it might mess with your positioning. So I'm going to go ahead and take that out because it looks fine, to be honest to me. And there we go. That looks good. All right, cool. So that's looking pretty good now, guys. I like this. This is looking pretty decent. I'm gonna go ahead and leave this section as is. Maybe give this a background color. Let's say black. Actually, I got a good idea. Color white. Let's do that. Ooh, that's nice. That's nice. I like that. There we go. All right, cool. What we do, looking official and legit now. All right, cool. Now the next thing I'm going to go ahead and do is let's go back into this div.explorers selector here, and let's go ahead and play around with that some more. So the first thing I'm going to want to do is let's give it a border. All right, give it a border so we can see it. 2 pixels, solid black. Let's keep that theme going, and let's give it a border radius. Edge. Let's round the corners a little bit, like we did 5 pixels, right? And honestly, in this case, you might want to just copy a lot of the code from, at least from the the padding and the borders and the background colors, maybe, if you want to keep a theme here. I'm gonna go ahead and be bold though, and change my background dash color to, I don't know. Let's go ahead and do, let's do gray, and do the color text white. Now let's see how that looks. Okay, so obviously when I have it this minimized like this, it looks awful, but if I make it bigger, it looks marginally better. So let's go ahead and, so we've got this made, right? But the next thing we need to do is we need to actually make, you know, the actual, for each of the explorers images, right? We gave, if you remember, we went back, if we go back here, we gave each of our actual explorers their own little div, right? Their own little div element. So each one has its own class, Explorer 1, XP2, Exp3, and let's go ahead and make the styles for that now. So the first thing I'm going to want to do here is I'm going to say div.xp1, Then I'm going to say comma, because I can select all of them and make the styles for them all the same this way. So now I only need to define the style of this once, right? So that's nice and convenient. XP4, and even then, kind of a big pain to type them all out even once, like, dear God. Alright, 6. Alright, so now what I want to do is say float colon left, right, and then alright, so we're going to go ahead and change the width of this to these elements. Let's put them at, I don't know, 48%, so it's a little less, so we can have some margin there. And the problem we're going to run into, though, is these images are still a little bit too big. So notice, even though we applied the width here, the images, the box didn't grow with it. So let's go ahead and what I would do in this situation, maybe, to give myself greater controls, I'm actually going to go ahead down here and add a class. So this new class I'm going to add is class equals exp image, so explorer image, and then I'm going to go ahead and class, and I'm going to go ahead and copy that, and as you can see I kind of just did that. I snuck that in there, I didn't tell you, and went and did that, and so now I'm going to sneak these all in for each one of these here, and for each of my images they will have this class explorer image, and I can actually change the size of this independently. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and say .exp image, and let's go ahead and set the width and height 150 pixels. Let's do, yep, and then height 200 pixels, and let's go ahead and see how that looks now. So, alright, so that looks much better, much better. So now that's positioned properly, things are looking good there. So let's say that I actually had, different explorers here and whatnot, but for now that's pretty decent. Alright, so let's go ahead and go back here. So this is looking pretty decent. Maybe I would want to give this a border. I definitely want to do text align center, right? Get that centered. See how that looks. That looks pretty good to me. Everything's all centered, kind of neat. And maybe I want to go back to my div up here and center this famous explorers header here. Text echelon center for the inside of this div.explorers for the entire container. Do that, and now things are looking nice and good. Alright, so we've got that here. We might want to mess with this margin though, right? It's button up against here. So let's go ahead and play with that margin. So what we're going to do is we're going to change the margin dash top. And this again is where you might want to just go back up here and remember what your about section margin top was. I did 20 pixels, so I'll do 20 pixels here. I'm going to put it in the right spot. And I'm also going to say margin dash right. Let's go ahead and say, I don't know, 100 pixels, because things are getting this, so that's too much apparently. 50 pixels maybe. No, okay, let's just take that out. This Isle of Skye is sneaking in there. So as you can tell, that looks pretty decent. We've got this Isle of Skye sneaking in there right now. We're gonna have to play around with that separately, right? So that's the issue we're running into now, that Isle of Skye is able to sneak in and float over here, and we don't want that, right? So things are looking pretty good though. We're getting this nice and laid out, so let's go ahead and keep moving. Let's keep moving. So the next section we're going to want to mess around with is the trips section, right? So if we go back to our drawing here, so we've got here this done, we've got all of this done. Let's go ahead and play around with this. Alright, so let's try to figure that guy out. So let's go down here and type in let's say div.trip1, comma div.trip2, or how do we do this? Let's go back down and take a look. So we said div class trips, right? So let's say div.trips. I was making a mistake there. So div.trips. So that's going to be this entire thing right here, right? And then we've got individual class names here. So let's go ahead and first say div.trips, say float left, and let's go ahead and let's give this, and let's see what that does for us. So we do that, and now thankfully it's all floated down here. Again, this image is huge, right? So maybe we might want to play with that really quick. So what we might want to do is, again, the same way we took this Explorer image class and gave it to each of those images, we might want to go down here and give each of these images a class and say class equals, I don't know, trip image, and then take those and make sure that they're all the same size, right? So this way I can then go up to my style up here and then say trip image, and now I can go ahead and set the width let's say, I don't know, I want these to be a little bigger, so let's make them 400 pixels width, and height, let's make that 250 pixels. Let's see what that looks like. Could look horrible. I don't know, it's probably going to look horrible. Just a guess here. So now we go back, and actually that's not that horrible. Things are a little kind of scrunched, so we probably want to make it a little wider for these, right? These are kind of looking a little scrunched to me, so let's make them even a little wider. So let's go ahead and actually change the scaling a little bit. Let's go ahead and do 300 pixels, and let's do 150 pixels, see what that looks like. That looks okay. So now things are looking pretty decent there. At least the sizes are decent. Obviously I might want to make them a little bigger, but for now that'll do. So the next thing we're going to want to do, so we've got these images sized right so that the things aren't just crazy looking. Let's go ahead, and the next thing we're going to want to do is we're actually going to want to set the width to 100%, so that way, you know, it takes up the entire width of this web page. And then the next thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to actually, you know, take each of these classes and float them individually inside of our container. So we'll say, let's just grab all of them. So do that first, .sky, which is my first class, right, .sky. Then I got .north cascades. And I'm going to take this class is too long of a name. I'm going to name that Antarctica, just because I don't want to type out that. And the North Cascades, oops, can't forget the dot, North Cascades, right? Dot Antarctica, and let's go ahead and mess around with this. So it's at the width. Actually, first things first, it's float it left, right? And again, these floats are super useful. I know I've been using them a lot, and it kind of really helps me with the styling here. So 30%, because that'll be about a third, right? A little under a third. Let's see what that looks like. Okay, so obviously like this, it's going to be all messed up when you resize the image. Oops. But if I go full, that actually looks pretty okay. So the next thing I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to, I don't know, give these a, let's give the entire trips thing a border, right? So go back up here that those are positioned. Say border 2 pixels, solid black, keep with that theme. And let's say border dash radius, again keeping with that theme, 5 pixels. And let's give it the background dash color green. Let's see what that looks like. Oops. Alright, so looking at this, obviously we've got a lot of space right here. We might want to go back and resize this if we look at our design again, like it takes up all this space. So we might want to go back and even make this a little longer, make the text, you know, a little bigger. But looking down here, this is looking pretty decent. It's a little wide for my tastes. Maybe we want to make it a little, or maybe we want to make this a little wider, but notice it's buttoned up against this again. We probably want to mess with the margin, and then each of these we probably want to give borders around each of these images, right? So let's go ahead and go back to the code, and let's take a look at that. So put that back there. So the first thing we're probably going to want to do is for our div.trips, our entire box that we have around there, we'll say margin dash top. Let's go ahead and say, I don't know, 25 pixels, see what that looks like. That looks pretty good. That's a good separation there. The next thing I'm going to want to probably do is each of these I probably want to put a border around them. So I'm going to say 2 pixels, solid white maybe. And then also I'm going to want to text align center, so things are kind of centered. So let's see what this looks like now. So refresh it, take a look. That looks pretty okay. I might change that border color. It kind of looks a little funky to me. And I might want to actually make these each a little wider, and then also give them some separation. So let's go ahead and make them, let's do 33%. Let's give it, actually do 32%, and let's give it a margin dash right for each of these. Let's say, I don't know, 15 pixels maybe? Let's see what that looks like. Oh, nope. Now the problem we ran into is since we did margin dash right, there wasn't enough space on the side there. So let's go ahead and make this 31%. See if that fits here. Nope, it still doesn't look like it's fitting. Oh, there it is on the regular window. So again, this is looking pretty decent. So fitting pretty decently in there. I might want to reduce this size of my my width here. So let's go ahead and take the width of my entire div.trips down to, let's say, 97%. See what that looks like. It's still a little big. Let's go ahead and say 93%. Let's take a look. That's pretty good. So again, I got some of this space over here, so at the end I might go back and change this, but honestly, I might just move everything to the left and center it a little bit, just because it'll look a little bit better overall. But right now, this is looking okay, guys. This is looking okay. So I'm gonna go back and change this color here to black. I don't like that white. It kind of looks goofy to me. Actually, let's try red maybe. See what that looks like. No. Okay. Let's just quit messing with it and do black. Alright. So, that's looking pretty, we're looking pretty decent here now, right? So, first steps, we're doing pretty good. So, the next thing, and I mean, there's two ways to attack this problem, right? So, I've got this is looking pretty decent. There's two ways to attack this problem of this big gap right here, right? So, I could either make these images smaller, or I can stretch this down and make this section bigger. In this case, or you might even want to add like a, we could change this so that we could take these images and put them vertically here instead of putting them down in a separate section down here. We put them in a separate section right here. Now, again, this is how it goes sometimes, right? So your design looks fantastic. It looks beautiful. But when you go from design to reality, things kind of change. So, but right now, just for sake of ease, I'm going to go ahead and actually change the size of this text, make it a little bigger, and let's go ahead and try that. All right, so let's go ahead and go back here. Let's go back up to, that would be my about, div.about, right? And go up here and font dash size 140%. Let's say font dash size 170%. All right, it's making it bigger. Even bigger, apparently. Bigger, 200%. See what that looks like? And that's almost perfect. Let's do 225%. And again, I mean, this is ridiculous that I'm having to do this, but that's how it goes sometimes. And this doesn't look great, but again, I'm doing this on the fly, and you should be able to spend a lot more time with this than I am doing currently, right? I'm just trying to get this so it makes sense for you guys, and it looks decent. So let's do 230%, and that should be close enough for my tastes. Alright, so that's looking pretty okay, right? So, alright, so I'm going to go and scroll down here a little bit, and you know what, let's go ahead and attack this problem that we're having right here where we have this gap over here. Let's go ahead and move everything to the left. So how we're going to do that now, so let's go back to our code, and I'm going to go up to my original dot about here, and I'm going to go ahead and say position relative, and let's move it left, let's say, I don't know, 5%. Let's see what that looks like. And I'm going to go ahead and have to copy this, right, and take all of this div.about and do that the same thing for div.explorers, my container there, and my div.trips as well, so that they all move to the left 5%, right? So now, that's looking okay. Maybe 5% was a little too much. Maybe I need to take that down to, let's do 3%. And again, so much tweaking, right? I mean, this is half of building a website is just the constant tweaking, making things just right. That looks about perfect to me. So, and this other problem I have right here where I have this, like these borders are butting up against each other, and this is like kind of shifted over here. Let's go ahead and tackle that problem next. So, go down to my .sky all my different classes I had for that. Remember, I gave each of my trips an individual class so I could then do this. And now I'm going to go up there. Remember, I separated each of these by commas. Now I'm going to say left. That's, oh, I got to say position relative first. Position relative left. And let's move that 5% and see what that looks like. No, didn't change it yet. I might not have saved it. So that didn't move it at all. So that's not cool. Alright, so maybe I need to do, let's do not 5%, but no, this could be the problem. Let's do 2%. See if that works. No, it's not really moving, so maybe I need to do actually, let's see if I can do some pixels. 10 pixels. Well, that seems not to be working. So, I mean, sometimes I'm losing this position relative improperly right now, and I mean, I do that I'll try to position things and it won't work, right? So what I might do here is I might just say margin dash left, right? I did margin dash right, but let's do margin dash left. And actually, let's just do this for dot sky and see if that works. So dot sky, because that's my furthest most left. So if I say margin dash left and say 15 pixels, let's see how that does here. So now if we go back, that looks pretty good. Now for all of these though, right, so I just did that for the left one, everything shifted over. For all of these, I'm probably going to do margin dash top, say, I don't know, 20 pixels, and margin dash bottom, 20 pixels, so we get that separation from the borders, right? So now things are looking pretty good there, right? That's actually looking pretty good. And this, again, is pretty close to my website right now. This is pretty close to this design I have right here. It's not perfect by any means, but, you know, it's pretty close. A couple other things that I was talking about, if you wanted to, each of these div classes, right, inside of this, each of these, if you wanted to have this image be a link so that they could click on it and take them to, you know, these other places that I would have inside this Explorers, you could actually, you know, go ahead and say href, give it the link to that page over here. Let's say it was you know, hashtag Explorers or whatever, and then actually, if you do that, and I go down to this next line before I close off this div, I can then say /a, and now this is actually, if you notice, this is actually a link. When I hover over this one, it adds hashtag Explorers up here. Normally, if you did that, it would take you to that place wherever you specified in here, if you had like a bunch of different Explorers in here. And you could do the same thing for this Isle of Skye and these trips, and that would take you then to this trips page if you wanted to, so people could then click on these and they would take you to those trips pages. To be honest, I'm not going to spend the time to do that because, I mean, this video is already really long. But the last thing I'm going to want to do, let's go ahead and change this background here. So right now it's really white. I'm going to go ahead and, let's go ahead and change the background color. So if you want to change the background color, the easiest way I've always found is just to say body, background dash color. And I don't know what's going to work with my color scheme here, but let's go ahead and try, I don't know, let's try black, because that seems to be working for me. Let's do that. Let's take a look here, and do that, and nope, that's really bad. Really bad, guys, really bad. Alright, so let's go ahead and change that to, how about green? I like green. I've been wanting to use green this whole time. Alright, that looks great. Again, having so much fun trying to find the right color. You will too. Let's go ahead and take, I don't know, and again, if you're having this much difficulty finding a background color, you might just want to find a background image. Like maybe I want to instead to do URL, and let's look up a, I don't know, let's look up a background image. I'm going to pause this video really quick, come back with a background image here. Alright, so I found my link, gonna put it in here. Let's see how it looks, and if it doesn't look great, you know, I would go find a different one. But for now, let's take a look here, and that looks pretty decent. You know, maybe I don't want it to repeat, so what I can do is I can actually go back here and say background dash repeats. I can type repeats, no dash repeats. And that's going to, the problem with that though, right, is it's going to actually just be one, and now we got a bunch of white here, right? So then I need to say background to make it the full size, background dash size, and I can say 100%, so that's 100% width, 100% height of my body, do that, and now it's going to stretch it so that it fits. You know, it doesn't look great, but it looks, you know, all right by my standards for now for, you know, making an entire video here in an hour. So again, I normally wouldn't be done with this. I would keep tweaking this for probably another, you know, couple hours maybe to get everything perfect. But for right now, that should give you enough hints and stuff to get started. So let's go